Good afternoon. My name is Dan Pitt, and I'm pleased to be hosting this session on Lean Nfv for the Layer 123 World Congress. I'm always thrilled to be part of the Layer 123 World Congress because I've been involved with Layer 123 since the very beginning, at either the beginning of 2012 or the end of 2011. And I've co-hosted many conferences with Layer 123 and have enjoyed them all. So I'm happy to be part of this one. I wish it were in person like it was supposed to have been, but that was foiled by the pandemic 2 years in a row now. Hopefully next year we'll be able to appear in person. This year, I am really honored to have three distinguished panelists to discuss Lean Nfv, this novel approach to making Lean Nfv implementable, disaggregated, and deployable. And we're focusing on the commercial progress of Lean Nfv. We had a panel last year was sort of, how does it work? This year, it's very much more going to be, all right, so where have we taken it? How do you actually implement it? How do you build it? How do you deploy it? How do we get customers interested? What problems does it solve? So it's very much commercially focused this year. Our panelists will introduce themselves, but I'm just very honored that we have David Naylor, Javier Benitez, and Jinu Koshi. All in different countries. David's in the US, as am I. Javier is in Spain, and Jinu is joining us from India. So this is a global panel and reflecting, I think, the global development of all of this technology. And we've certainly seen the application of remote and automated technologies in this pandemic as we've all been working from other places than we used to work. The way we're going to run the panel this morning is I'm going to give each person an opportunity to say a word about who they are and what they do. Then we'll go through each of the panelists to give a short presentation on the points they want to make. Then we will have questions for the panelists. And in fact, at the end of each one's presentation, short presentation, we'll give the other panelists an opportunity to ask questions based on what they just showed. About 45 or 50 minutes into this hour, we're going to stop this, and because this is recorded, and we're going to open up for live questions at the time of the actual Layer 123 World Congress. We will all be online for that. We'll be answering questions in the chat, whatever means they have during this presentation that's recorded. And then at the end of it, we will all be live at the conference with you and can answer questions live. So let's start now by having a brief introduction of the panelists by themselves. We'll just go in alphabetical order. So please, David, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. As Dan said, my name is David Naylor. I am a software engineer at Nfv Networks. And I've been there, Nfv is an early stage startup. I've been there probably 4.5 years now, which is almost since the beginning of the company. And so I've really gotten to see us go from, sort of just ideas and the beginnings of a product all the way through to a commercial product that's in deployment. So I look forward to talk about that.
Very good. Thank you, David. Javier.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Javier Benitez. I am part of the innovation team in Colt. I've been working for Colt for many years, more than 20 years. And for the last 20, I have been honored to be able to lead Colt through the digital transformation, I would say. So I've been involved with SDN from the very beginning, representing Colt at ONF. Also part of the NFV launch originally, and for the last 3 years driving the network virtualization strategy for Colt, and that's the reason why I've been in contact with Lean Nfv, and it will be a pleasure to share our findings with all of you today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and Javier, it's been a great pleasure to have been a colleague of you for nearly the entire journey of SDN and NFV. And
a pleasure as well. Yeah.
A great satisfaction out of seeing Colt take a leading position in the market in both of these technology areas. And I've visited your company offices in London multiple times, and been to Barcelona where you work as well. Let's go now to Jinu.
Thank you, Dan. Good day to everyone. This is Jinu Koshi. I lead Infosys's industry consulting unit that faces the communication media sector. I have a global mandate working with executives across the globe who are trying to solve this problem or opportunity of digitization across the IT landscape as well as the network landscape. And it's an honor for me to join this conference. Dan, thank you for the opportunity, and to interact with colleagues such as David, who I know very well over the last several months, as well as Javier. And it's a privilege to speak. Infosys is a digital ecosystems integrator. That's our positioning in the market. So we bring the moving parts of the ecosystem together, integrate them, and deliver business outcomes. That's really where our role is in the industry. I'm happy to talk about it more as we go along and how we see Lean Nfv and the adjoining technologies that make up this great opportunity. Dan, thank you.
Well, thank you, Gino. And we're going to have really all the right perspectives here from a vendor, from David, from an operator, from Javier, and I think Gino is going to bring us a lot of the customer enterprise perspective as well. So hopefully this will give us a sense of the marketplace and how this gets to the marketplace. We're going to start with David, who will explain, for those of you not too familiar with NFV, what it actually is and how they have built it and what it constitutes. So David, why don't you go ahead and give your presentation?
All right, thanks, Dan. So since I'm up first, as Dan said, I thought I would start with a one-slide primer on Lean Nfv, and then I'll sort of call back to this slide as I talk about Nefeli. So I believe now the original NFV white paper is 8 years old, and I don't think it's unfair to say that NFV has been a little bit slower to deliver on its promise than a lot of us had hoped maybe at the beginning. And so the premise behind Lean Nfv is that slow pace is due to the way we've traditionally looked at integrating the pieces of an NFV solution. So we sort of recognized a couple characteristics that we thought were common to a lot of NFV architectures. And so I thought I would just talk about those briefly. So the first is sort of this pattern of tight-knit pairwise APIs where the components of an NFV solution are very tightly woven together. So that's the VNFs, the NFV manager, and then the computational infrastructure that they both run on. And so this causes problems both at design time, because if you want to make a change to one of these pieces, you have to consider all of its interactions with the other pieces. And then also at runtime, because to actually stand this up and get it running, you need to be able to tell each piece where all of the other pieces are and make sure that they're able to communicate. And so Lean Nfv replaces this pattern with a single central declarative source of all the configuration and status that any of the pieces of the system need. And so this is good, again, both at sort of design time, because there's, of course, the pieces still need to coordinate. The producer and the consumer of a piece of configuration need to agree on its format and its meaning, but it sort of shifted the focus to defining the tasks to be done, the orchestration tasks to be done first, and what data is needed for those, rather than the players, the actors that are going to be carrying out those tasks. And so, for example, if you're a VNF vendor and you want to make a change or add a new piece of state data, like the degree to which you are currently overloaded, you don't need to worry about how many other people, how many other pieces of the NFV management or the infrastructure are interested in or subscribe to that data. You can make that change and just publish it to the central key value store. And then, of course, at runtime, you just point all the pieces at the key value store and you're up and running. And then the second pattern that we saw was sort of a reliance on specialized infrastructure. So the NFV manager might rely on, for example, specific features of, say, OpenStack in order to implement some of the NFV orchestration. And this makes the solution less portable. It's harder to move around to different environments. And so Lean Nfv cautions against this and instead proposes the opposite. The NFV manager should expect as little as possible from the Vim, just a core set of key operations like the ability to reserve resources, launch and monitor jobs, and establish network connectivity. And if you do that, now your solution is a lot more portable. And so that brings me to what Nfv is doing. So Nfv has built a commercial product, a commercial NFV orchestrator called Tapestry. It's based on the Lean Nfv architecture. And this slide is actually one of the first marketing slides that we show new potential customers. And I show this not to turn this panel into a sales pitch, but rather to highlight how much of Lean Nfv, how much Lean Nfv contributes to the high level features that make us popular with our customers. And so right off the bat, you see two. So infrastructure independence, well, that falls directly out of this minimal reliance on what the infrastructure provides. So we can run on cloud, on-prem, on UCPEs at remote edge sites, et cetera. And second, multi-vendor support. So you can grab NFs from a bunch of different vendors, toss them together, and there's no interoperability problems. And again, this falls out of sort of the VNF agnostic design of the NFV manager. And additionally, as the name would suggest, the API that an NF needs to support to be part of a Lean NFV system is Lean. So this means it doesn't take us long to onboard new NFs as customers ask for them. And now the development time that we save, so our core dev team is mostly focused on the automation, the new orchestration features. And we can spend most of our time on that because we're not constantly being interrupted by onboarding new NFs or expanding to run on different platforms, because that sort of, we have this nice isolation between all of the orchestration logic, which is really our core value, and then the integration with the two other pieces of the ecosystem, the infrastructure and the VNFs. And then finally, while this is not strictly part of Lean NFV, we've sort of taken the principles of Lean NFV to heart when it comes to observability and debuggability. And so almost all of our telemetry comes from our vSwitch, because it's touching every packet in between all the NFs. And so rather than relying on NF or vendor specific APIs to get telemetry information like, what are the traffic stats and how loaded are the NFs, we get that in a vendor agnostic way from the vSwitch. And so again, this contributes to being able to onboard new NFs quickly. I'm almost out of time. I just thought I would end by saying there's a lot of ways you can use Lean NFV, and I just wanted to highlight three of the ways that Nfv is seeing in the market and products that we've built. So the first is managed enterprise edge. So traditionally, if you're a business and you sign up for internet service, you have some equipment, some customer premise equipment that lives at all of your branch sites that does all of your basic networking, like routing, firewalling, and NATing. And we're seeing more and more carriers offer a product where offer virtual customer premise equipment. So rather than shipping equipment to all the branch sites, just give them a dumb pipe into the carrier's data center or POP, and then launch do all of the rich networking there on a shared NFV infrastructure. The second use case is bandwidth on demand. So there's some workloads where you need high reliable throughput, but only sporadically. So for example, medical imaging. So you have an MRI scan that you need to move from a hospital to a remote specialist office. Those are really big and high res and time sensitive. And so you might want to be able to on demand reserve a high bandwidth link, do your transfer, and then tear it down when you're done. And so this is another use case that we're building. And then finally, as you might imagine, edge computing is popular. And so edge networking is a part of edge computing. And so we've been looking at use cases there as well. We just did a TM Forum Catalyst POC where we built a smart stadium use case. And so, the idea is you have an event at some venue, you might want to spin up some NFs to support all the spectators on their phones, either on the Wi-Fi or 5G during the event. And you might also need some workload specific NFs like video transcoding or caching. And so doing this POC it was valuable for us in this use case to be able to onboard new NFs quickly. So with that, I guess I'll pause for questions before we hand it over to the next panelist. And then, of course, I'm looking forward to answering the questions that come in live during the actual panel as well.
All right, Javier, Gino, questions for David?
Yeah, maybe one question, David, as obviously you are actively involved in the MEF standardization that is going on at the moment for Lean Nfv. I mean, I'm interested to understand from you. I mean, where do you think we are at the moment in terms of bringing Lean Nfv to a point where there is some standard defined and some critical mass to be accepted in the industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the focus on the MEF work so far has been on the, if I go back to this slide, I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but this arrow here, so the API for the VNFs to interact with the rest of the system. And so that work is actually quite far along. I'm not on the weekly calls, but I understand that we have, I think, a very sort of mature draft of the spec for this part of the API done. And now we're, I think, seeking input from as many vendors and carriers as possible. And so my hope is that fairly soon we'll be at a point where we can give a guide to VNF vendors and they can start making Lean NFs. And once they do that, you can just drop it into a system like Nefeli's and go. Then I think that the focus will shift to this arrow, and we'll need to start looking at what it takes to write Lean NF management controllers, and that part is largely to be done.
Yeah, quick follow-up to that. You mentioned onboarding VNFs, do it rapidly. They're not native Lean NFV VNFs at this point. Hopefully they will be once we get this standard published, and I run those weekly calls in that project. In the absence of that standard, what does it take for you to onboard them so that they do talk to the key value store?
Yeah, good question. This is one of the challenges of building a system based on Lean NFV when the standard isn't done yet. We've actually been pleasantly surprised. So the approach Nefeli takes is for each NF that we onboard, we write a thin wrapper that translates between the Lean NFV APIs on one side and the vendor-specific APIs for each VNF on the other side, whether that be a REST API, netconf yang, SSH in, and do some shell commands. And so onboarding an NF for us is largely just a process of learning that NF's APIs and writing that wrapper. And we've found that is actually not as hard as we expected. It takes us about 2 weeks to onboard a new NF from scratch.
Okay, very good, thanks. Gino, any questions for David? Okay, you were on mute.
I was trying to unmute. Okay. Yeah, I was unmuted. Yeah, yes, thank you, David. A couple of questions. One is on the standardization of these onboarding techniques itself. And we've, having looked at your technology a little bit, what do you think, would you think standardization there at that would increase the adoption? That's one question. And then I have a follow-on, which is slightly more broader in the business side.
Yeah, so to address your first question, the hope is that the VNF vendors will take over this, and so the onboarding process, like the process of writing this wrapper, can eventually just go away, depending on how quickly the vendors do that and how much interest there is from them. We may need, we'll see how long this intermediate transition period needs to last. And so there may be value in the intermediate term to standardizing sort of this wrapper creation process. Yeah.
Great, thanks, David.
Good.
Well, the broader question that I have is, if we were to grant one wish, David, that'll really accelerate the adoption, what would that be?
It would absolutely be for the VNF vendors to integrate the Lean NFV APIs into their NFs. I think when we get to the second phase of standardization, which is looking at the NFV manager part, I think there's opportunities for innovation there as well. But if we could just get the VNFs done, that would go so far. Just to be able to take one off the shelf, drop it onto a Lean Nfv system, and absolutely no integration work is needed. It just works. That would be fantastic.
I'm looking forward to hopefully having just kind of a, not an explosion, at least a flowering of new VNFs, meeting needs that are sort of at the long tail and haven't been met yet by independent authors, and also authors of the so-called microcontrollers, the management functions, whether it's placement or licensing or chaining or whatever it might be, that people will write those and we'll have compose a library of these things. So you don't have to buy a monolithic solution. So that's my hope as well. Thank you, David. Let's go to Javier.
Let me share my screen. Can you please confirm that you can see the slides? Okay.
Yes, we can.
All right. So so Colt and Lean Nfv, in order to explain why and how we have been involved with Lean Nfv, I need to then come back to this journey that we've been in for the last, I mentioned in my introduction, 10 years of digital transformation. As probably the audience know, the telecom industry has been traditionally very, very static, not only in the way we build services, but also in the way we offer these services to our customers. And everything is starting to change in the last decade basically with this revolution of software in the telecom industry. The starting point for us was approaching SDN. So being able to program the network and being able to change the way our customers consume connectivity, just pure connectivity services. And by using SDN, we've been able to develop an on-demand proposition where customers consume through digital interfaces connectivity from us. Okay, and this is real, and this is being used by our customers on a daily basis. And those services can be consumed through a portal or through an API. And by the way, this has been a very, very successful interaction with MEV in standardizing those APIs that we use today for intercarrier communication in order to consume those services. Once we've been able to cover this basic connectivity on demand, then this is when we moved into the next phase, which is offer services on top of connectivity. And this is where NFV come into place, where we have built at the moment the foundation of what is an edge platform or a network virtualization platform that sits both in customer premise and in the telco edge in order to deliver those services. And for that we use obviously NFV technology. We use the possibility to instantiate those services as a virtual network functions, and being able to offer that to our customers through the same digital customer experience. So on top of being able to consume connectivity on demand, now we offer the possibility to consume services through the same digital experience. So what we have done in order to build this NFV platform, this network virtualization platform to be able to offer these services to customers. We have built what we call a distributed edge infrastructure. We have deployed an NFV platform that we deploy in customer premise that we call Universal CPE. So this is just a white box that we virtualize. And then on top of that, we are able to instantiate different network functions. That was the starting point in our journey of building this distributed NFV platform in Colt. And then we complemented this by developing a proper telco cloud that we deploy in our transmission nodes, following the same approach and the same concept of NFV, but this being a bigger platform, a pool of compute infrastructure that we manage in a unified way as a cloud in order to deliver virtualized network services to our customers. And then finally, the third piece in this architecture is an end-to-end orchestration, and this is where we have introduced the Lean Nfv approach, and it has actually been in order to implement this on-demand digital customer experience, where we have seen really a lot of value in using Lean Nfv to do that. And I will finalize this short introduction in trying to identify, I mean, what are some of the challenges that we have observed as we have gone through this journey of building an NFV platform in a service provider like Colt, and what are the let's say the reasons from a high level point of view that have motivated us to look into Lean NFV. When we started our project, we used the GMT20211110 as a reference architecture. I mean, we launched an RFP that was 4 years ago. It was heavily based on that architecture. I mean, that is what we had at that time. But over time, I mean, we faced several issues. I mean, the first one was we couldn't find a solution that covered both domains. Let's say on-premise edge and network edge. For instance, I mean, this is something that we envision to do that today with Lean Nfv. So I have the feeling that this could be related to the actual architecture, GMT probably being difficult to be applied to both domains at the same time. Then from an overall architecture point of view, and specifically for the telco cloud, our experience has been that the architecture was very complicated. It was really complex to managing all the different components. Specifically, I would say having to deal with the OpenStack, that has been the de facto Vim solution as per GMT terminology. So it's complex in terms of resource requirements, in terms of implementation, and it was clear to us that it was really not telco optimized. So it was easy to identify that it was more built from an IT perspective. Then from an orchestration point of view, it was also very challenging for us to find a solution to the point that we, in our original RFP, we intended to cover the orchestration piece and we couldn't solve that. And this is now something that we are trying to deliver through the use of Lean Nfv. And finally, VNF onboarding using, let's say, the traditional NFV architecture has been challenging for us. If I share our experience with Lean Nfv so far, what we have definitely seen is a much simplified architecture. So we incorporated Lean Nfv, let's say, in a later stage in our process, but our experience is that it has been really simple to introduce, much simpler to engineer and to bring in production. Also from an operations and engineering point of view, I mean, we've been able, and I think it's I can openly share that we are using Nfv in our implementation. It's been possible for us to manage the overall engineering and operations of the platform without having to get really dedicated professional services to do it. So this has been really an improvement on our side. And finally, MEF standardization. I mean, we have been part of MEF for a long time. We have benefited from all the standardization work recently on the LSO architecture for the Sonata interface, and the fact that Lean Nfv is part of MEF at the moment gives us a lot of confidence. So yeah, I think that's my short presentation. Open for questions.
Gino and David, questions for Javier?
Yeah, actually, on one of your slides, you showed a VNF marketplace, and I was curious, in your experience talking to Colt's customers so far, how many of them are opinionated or want to be able to choose the specific NFs or the brands of NFs versus how much Colt will make those choices and then just offer them as generic services to customers.
Yeah, that's that's a good point. So we have experience mainly on the, let's say, on the universal CPE front. This is where we have developed an ecosystem of vendors and services at this point in time, and yeah, I mean, I would say is a mixed environment. So we started by offering some Colt managed solutions. So Colt managed SD-WAN plus firewall. But it's, I mean, we have received very clear requirements from our customers to support particular vendors for firewall and for all the type of applications. So over time, let's say our roadmap is growing both by adding Colt managed applications, but also incorporating vendor requirements in terms of they want to see a particular vendor, a particular function, and even, I mean, we are enabling customer directly managed type of solutions as well.
Got it.
Javier, thank you. Could you touch on the idea of either coexisting with hyperscalers or not in the space of, let's say, offering eventual solutions that are wrapped around, and how do you see the interplay of a hyperscale-based offer eventually?
Yeah, also a good point. At the moment, we are trying to understand what's the best partnership approach with a hyperscaler, and to be honest, we have a very fluent discussion with them. We see Colt position around our core business, which is all about delivering network services and virtualized network services. So this is something that let's say we know how to do, we master, and we see our edge platform being focused on this type of network functionality. And we see us partnering with hyperscalers and others, SIs, when we go into the more edge computing type of solutions. That is something that we are exploring at the moment. So we see us partnering with those hyperscalers, for instance, to bring their platforms, their solutions for, let's say, for applications that go much beyond the network expertise. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time. There are a lot of conversations going on in terms of partnering. We are talking to a number of partners. We are talking to hyperscalers. We have potential partnerships going on to bring even the edge platforms in our infrastructure and develop joint go-to-market solutions. But yeah, I mean, with this split that I mentioned before, I mean, we see our platform really being focused in this network type of services, and then partnering for, let's say, more all the type of applications that go more into the edge compute arena.
Thank you, Javier.
Just following up, Javier, on your mention of the VNFs. It sounds to me, if my impression is correct, that the VNFs we're getting are sort of familiar software versions of the hardware appliances we bought in the past. And I'm wondering what you would like to see in the way of VNFs that don't necessarily mirror a hardware appliance of the past, if we can get independent authors with very low resources to just write one and have it run anywhere you can deploy it.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dan. I mean, initially, what we see in terms of VNFs are just the software version of the traditional physical appliances and physical vendors. And this is driven, I mean, both because this is what we know, and this is easier for us to start with. This is what our customers know as well, and they demand this. Over time, obviously, we want to see this changing, and we want to see really people coming with different type of VNFs, different approaches, even considering open source. Open source VNFs is something that we have started to explore, to be honest. and we actually have some open source VNFs ready to test that we plan to evaluate as part of our managed offering. So yeah, I mean, you're right, but initially, I mean, I think it makes sense that this is the starting point. Over time, I agree with you.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, Javier. Ginu, let's hear what you have to say.
Sure, thank you, Dan. Let's bring the presentation.
Javier will end his sharing and you can start.
Just please confirm that you're able to see the presentation.
We are.
Right. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Javier and David. I'm going to approach this opportunity from an Infosys perspective, from the business side. Having looked at the technology dimension, I will now look at the business side of things. So just to start with, just to do the lay of the land, as I speak to C-suite of telco clients, particularly across the globe, what are we seeing? You know, it is no surprise that growth is a necessity for all CSPs. There's massive demand to make sure top line growth is the #1 agenda of CEOs of telcos that we speak to. And what are we seeing in the market trends? Today, we're talking about on-demand networks. We're talking about things like Lean Nfv, where it's part of that puzzle which allows to solve this opportunity of potentially giving programmability to networks, right? So that the telcos then can deal with this big OpEx issue on one side, and to ensure that they're able to deal with this new opportunity to improve the top line with limited CapEx play. You know, there's obviously not unlimited CapEx going around to ensure that this is a success. And the point is, how do you then look and embrace new technologies, which, you know, the likes of Nfv networks and, you know, others offer in particular spaces like Lean Nfv, like, Colt has chosen to embrace, as we just heard. So the ability then to handle, what do I do with legacy? You know, we were just about a month ago with the CEO of a major PTT, who was talking about, you know, how do I deal with my legacy network? You know, can I bring programmability to the whole network, right? Can I bring flexibility so that I can give applications and the people who are consumers of those networks to easily, flexibly monetize and create that innovation that is needed? So that's really the problem statement we're looking at. Now, where do we start this, the business discussion? I would say keep the enterprise at the center, because most of the money is going to happen. If you look at the Fortune 2K, Fortune 5K, you know, really that's where the money is, right? Now, you want to really look at scaling the adoption of this technology. We're looking at potentially solving what those enterprises need. And where do the telcos really look at? You know, if you look at the ring of opportunities, on the right side, we're looking at really these industries by themselves trying to digitize. And we start with that digitization agenda, really start at that part as the starting point, and then work your way backwards into use case. So what are those use cases, rather than solving the tech alone and looking at, you know, where are those use cases to monetize? We start with the digitization of the enterprise and then work your way backwards. And that's an interesting position that we find ourselves in as Infosys. As we look at, you know, all these sectors, which is what our business is as a systems integrator, we see a plethora of opportunities that needs to integrate. You know, there is the technology dimension, which is being discussed in this conference and in this panel as well. There is startups like Nfv, there is standards bodies like MEF, there's consortium, there's cloud providers, which Javier alluded to. You know, how do you play with that opportunity, other technology partners that all need to come together to solve this eventual opportunity that we are talking about. And that's really where the drive. So the starting point is really the digitization of the enterprise. Let me quickly move in the interest of time and wrap this up for further discussion. So, clients are telling, not only do we need network as an underlying fabric, the orchestration across use cases, the ability to use multiple networks and yet, have one network or seemingly one, sort of interface that drives all of this to monetize using APIs, the notion of closed loop assurance, all of that built into this dimension of programmability. Eventually, what the clients are telling us is, how do we move towards everything as a service? And network and IT then becomes a means to that end, really. And that's my last slide, the growing expectations from networks, the flexibility that you would need to provide business, which is the programmable network opportunity that we talked about. Or you see as virtually as different lanes, the elderly user, you do a switch on the highway essentially to the gaming user, B2B2X opportunities that we're talking about at the enterprise side. And therefore the ability then to monetize based on experience-based packages that you provide then that flexibility either to the app or the content as it's written here to deliver eventually those use cases. So the underlying network then provides that capability, and that's where Lean Nfv comes in. We've had the privilege of partnering with this technology now standardized by MEF, and our position at Infosys is about scaling this opportunity. We do things when it's proven, you're able to then replicate rapidly and scale this so that there will be massive adoption, because really there's impatience at the C-suite to really see this solved. And we don't have all the time in the world. Unfortunately, the pace needs to pick up. And that's my submission that collectively as an industry, we will need to solve this softwareization pretty rapidly. There is not only the dimension of the network and the IT, all of this needs to happen in tandem. So digitizing that together with the enterprise digitization opportunity that eventually feeds into this. So on that note, I think we're on a great journey now. We're at the cusp of that opportunity, and let's see what the future unfolds as we integrate it. Thank you, and back to Dan, you.
Well, thank you, Gino. That was pretty stimulating. Going to ask David and Javier if they have questions for you.
Yeah. So I guess I sort of have two questions maybe. So one of the themes that is very strong in your presentation is sort of this, like when you go to the, when you start from the enterprise use case and then work backwards to the technology, is sort of like we're seeing this marriage between functionality you need from the network and then application layer functionality that sort of need to fuse together to make a product that you can sell to the enterprises. So I guess my first question is just, it sounds like NFV in general is a pretty key component to being able to do that, right? To being able to sort of be agile and nimbly add new, richer functionality to the network to support these new products, right?
Absolutely, David. NFV, and you alluded to, I think at the start, that the pace since SDN has been on, and Javier alluded to the long journey he's undertaken in this space as well. I think the journey has been slow, and I think Lean Nfv therefore accelerates that, finds that solution, to do it efficiently. And yes, NFV is at the center, especially of the enterprise opportunity, which is where I think a significant amount of money and opportunity is there. And the danger that the telco industry faces is, if we don't capitalize on this, the enterprise is going to solve this anyway, outside of this through savvy and faster decision making in enterprises. We're having, agile leadership at enterprises who are saying, I need to move faster than perhaps my telco partner is able to do. And that is the danger that we as an industry, having spent about 3 decades in this industry, serving right from chip to OEMs to operators now through an SI lens, I can tell you that we've got to move faster. But NFV is at the right at the center of it, David.
Yeah, and then so I guess my follow-up question to that, and I guess this is sort of like a what do you see in your crystal ball sort of question, but one thing that even just as we talk to people at Nfv that we keep bumping into is sort of like we're sort of seeing this like a blurring of the line between the network layer and the application layer, and if NFV moves the network into sort of shared compute infrastructure, and so now I guess I'm sort of wondering, like, how long do you think we'll have this distinction between, here's your NFV cluster and here's your application cluster? Like at some point, do those all just blur together and the network and the application is sort of all just one workload?
Absolutely. And I think it's a classical CTO, CIO question, right? Do you design an organization with a CTO and a CIO, or do you have a CTIO? And I see smiles on Javier's face as well. Perhaps they've solved it in a different manner, but their organizations said, we'll bring all of this under one roof. And I've actually, I think, and some of your earlier comments and questions, both of you, Javier, David as well, right? Culture, eats strategy for breakfast. So there is a great strategy, right? There is that saying, but unfortunately, the culture that we need to ensure that we instill that change. Would the network building talk to the IT building? Would you talk, in tandem? Would there be a blurring as we talk about, the softwareization of networks and the practices of NetOps, as they call it, coming into DevOps and, those expressions as we talk about it, but that truly one seamless organization, the way the digital natives are built, really reusing capabilities. And then, what is that distinction? Like you asked, David, absolutely valid.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, maybe not a question, but maybe just a follow up on this. I think I agree with what you said in terms of, probably we have been too slow. We are at risk because customers are actually waiting and expecting. But I was just reflecting on the fact that it's not only the technology, it's not only the architectures and how difficult they are or how streamlined they are. It's also this transformation is a big one for telecom industry. It's a big one, and we know internally, and we are also transforming, and we are evolving to this new software world, and this is just taking time. So just a note on this one. I completely agree. It's taking a lot of time, but not only the technology is to blame. Probably is also the pace at which we can also transform ourselves. Yeah.
No, absolutely, and that's a very valid point, Javier. We had we're in the middle of this digital transformation, right? And we report this digital index to the market as well. It's a big metric, regardless of whether digitization is on the network or on the IT side. We're asked constantly, and our chairman is one of the big proponents, Nandan. And there was a big delegation of about, I think, 25 CXOs who landed in our corporate office and asked our chairman, look, you don't know digitization. We don't know digitization. How are you going to help us? How are you going to? So his answer was very, very interesting. He said, there is no other choice other than us running faster and learning as faster than you could, right? And today we're talking about 300,000 employees, a large corporation. We got to change. We got to transform first before we can tell our customers that here's the way that we could. But you're absolutely right, Javier. We're in the same boat. We've got to transform, but we've got to. There's no other choice other than to run faster. We got to do this. actually for the industry. Thank you.
So I have a follow-up that really kind of dovetails with what you just said, Jinu. You said that the successful way forward is for top-line revenue growth with limited CapEx growth. How do you apply this both to the service providers and to the enterprise? How do they achieve these in these two different customer sets?
No, absolutely. And I think, Dan, you raised a valid point. I think we had picked that strand out. Could potentially look for alternative feeder. If you will look at network solutions as a potential opportunity that we talk, on either, SASE or other options that we're encountering in the market, or the hyperscale that Javier alluded to, where is exactly the opportunity here, right, for the enterprise pie? And I think you're absolutely right that as we solve this issue of not only delivering, the incumbent telcos and particularly incumbent organizations trying to deliver to this opportunity, got to transform themselves, but enterprises are likely to look at multiple options. And if we don't do that, and Colt has been a great proponent of this change, they've led the way in many ways in this particular area. But we've got to have that ability to take risks and make sure we nurture the ecosystem of innovators and embrace that innovation much faster. That's what we need to be successful at.
Very good. Thank you. Well, you can stop screen sharing and we'll go to some of the questions that we had queued up. And given that we're getting pretty far along in time, let me ask a question I think all three of you could answer in different ways. And that has to do with use cases. Now, you just mentioned SASE, Jinu. In MEF, we are seeing this as kind of a leading use case for us because it dovetails with our SASE project and our Universal SD-WAN Edge project and our SD-WAN project as well, and our zero-touch automation project. But what do you see as sort of the compelling use case for a customer that can really only be enabled or best enabled with Lean Nfv kind of under the covers providing? And I'll throw it open to any one of you as what you see as the most important leading use cases.
I think maybe this is a non-answer, but to me, I think it's not that there's any one use case that needs Lean Nfv or could benefit more than others from Lean Nfv, but rather just that any NFV architecture based on Lean Nfv is agile enough that you can quickly move to whatever use case you need when you need it. So, this both means, like what we've seen from Nefeli's perspective is both we can onboard new NFs quickly. So if there's if SASE is suddenly what a customer wants, we can onboard SASE appliances. And then we can also move the deployment to different environments, whether it be, moving from a data center rack to the cloud. And so to me, that's sort of the heart of what Lean Nfv enables. You can sort of move to new use cases quickly.
Yeah, maybe what I can do from Colt's side is just share our actual experience on what and why we ended up considering Lean Nfv. And this was at the point where we wanted to just offer NFV through our on-demand platform. As I mentioned before, I mean, we initiated this program 4 years ago. We built the foundation with 2 NFVI platforms, but we were missing really the key component, which was orchestration and integration with our orchestration engine to deliver on demand. And this is where we, when we learn about Lean Nfv, the technology, we were attracted by the fact that it was simpler, and it came with full orchestration and with true digital interfaces that we could consume very, very quickly. And that has been really the use case for us, Dan. So it's been really at the point where we wanted to deliver on-demand services that customers could consume through the same interfaces that we have built for our connectivity on demand. I mean, Lean Nfv has been just the perfect solution. And as David mentioned, I mean, our experience has been that I mean, VNF onboarding in the sense that support VNFs that we needed or integrating with our existing business orchestration has been, I mean, quite painful, I would say. I mean, it's been easier than in the previous iterations.
Thank you.
I would thank you, Javier and David. I would take a slightly different slant at the use case and again, look at the business layer. You know, of what organizations, product organizations of telcos and the business organization of the telco is trying to build a business case, if you will, to do these things. And, you know, I'll refer to two particular conversations that we're having in the last, 3 months or so with major telcos globally. You know, one is the ability then to, where do I start in the legacy network? I've got this legacy. Do I do an overlay architecture? Do I do an adjunct network, if you will, you know, and ensure that I prove this innovative technology and then eventually, you know, perhaps scale, right? And the business use cases which consume them are, you know, in a banking scenario, we're talking about potentially peak demand during a particular hour. How do you scale the how do you scale the ability then to improve capacity at that time? Or David, I think, referred to the healthcare use case, which is, you know, you want to send large files after a scan or something of that sort. And then, you know, do you think the WAN topology allows you to do that dynamically or programmatically? Can you ensure that that happens? So those are the business use cases. And today we are having product organizations of telcos tell us, you know, can you tell more of this, right? Bring us more of this so that we can have then under the cover, like Dan, you said, Lean Nfv quickly deliver that. And that's really the secret sauce of tying all of this together is really what will make the scale. Dan.
Well, that's great. I'm going to ask one final question for all of you, then I will turn off the recording. And that is, in your make a final statement, whatever you would like, but if it includes advice for others that might be contemplating this, you know, what to watch out for, maybe, where you see this going by the time of next year's Layer 123 World Congress. So David, we'll start with you, and we'll go to Javier and Gino for the final word.
Sure. I guess I would end with a call to action, which is to if you're contemplating either building or deploying a Lean Nfv solution, get involved now in the MEF standard. Every time we talk to new either new vendors or new customers, the high level shape of the Lean Nfv architecture, I think, is fairly set, but we're combing through all of the details now to actually make this a real standard. And I think it's important now to get as much input from as many different perspectives as possible to make sure that we've, thought about all the use cases and all the requirements for this, so that when we ask vendors to start making Lean NFs, we'll be able to meet everyone's needs. And so, every time we talk to someone new, we find some little things like, okay, we need this as part of the definition of an NF or part of the definition of an NF status. And so the earlier we can get more people joining in and more eyes on the standard, the more complete and the sooner it will be useful to more people.
Very good. Thank you, David. Javier. Yeah,
so Dave has done the call to action, so I don't have to do it. This would also apply to us. At the moment, we are contributing through Nefeli, I would say. We could also be more active, and we need to be more active. From our side, what is going to happen is that we are deploying this in production. So we've run all the POCs that we needed to run, and now we are actually developing and deploying. So by next year, what we will hopefully present at the conference will be Lean Nfv deployed in production, delivering services to customer, and those services are going to be VNFs being consumed on demand through our MEF LSO interfaces. Okay, so hopefully this is going to happen. But definitely, I agree with Dave. I mean, we need. I mean, whoever is interested in making NFV drive faster, I mean, needs to go read the document, understand what is going on in MEF, because I mean, this thing is real, and hopefully by next year we'll show this running in production.
Oh, that'd be great. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, Javier. Ginu.
All right, and I think I'll build the progression from David to Javier to we'll see the tech in production, and our idea would be that can we scale this? That's where the value that I see. And as I talk to clients, I'll paint two scenarios quickly. One is who tried to solve this opportunity through, unfortunately, PNFs. They've actually tried to, do the enterprise opportunity, saying I would potentially do network on demand, and yet they are trying to deal with PNFs. For whatever reason, they're not even, stepping stone into VNFs, when they're trying to deal with this problem. So I would think that they surely seriously need to look at something like this. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is that, like I told about incumbent, telcos, where they're saying, here's this legacy, I need to now deal with it, but help me transform. And I think what I hope to do is that, given the success of the Colt, scenario, if you're able to replicate that sort of, approach, that'll be great. That then they provide adjunct network capability using under the cover technologies such as Lean Nfv. Then you're able to then prove and move and scale, right? So really, that's a great opportunity. So at the next year conference, then we would be talking about not only Colt in production, but perhaps many more that scale, and there will be an adoption of this technology worldwide. Dan?
Well, thank you. I look forward to that too. I want to thank all of you, Gino, Javier, David, for sharing your expertise in a most enlightening panel discussion. And I want to thank Layer 123 for inviting and hosting this panel. Thank you.
Thank you.